Hi, Ellie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to asking you lots of questions. I know we have lots to talk about. This is Ellie Breeze. Ellie Breeze is my podcast guest for today. And Ellie is an illustrator, an artist. You studied fine art, I believe. Is that true?
I studied fine art, yeah.
And she is one of the founders of Together Culture in Cambridge, which I'm sure we will talk about at length during the podcast. And would you mind just quickly introducing yourself before I turn my camera around and we start drawing together? What can you?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in Cambridge for about 12 years now. I came here to study art at Anglia Ruskin University. And then I stuck around and I ran Motion Sickness Project Space for a couple of years with some friends. And that was a kind of art gallery, contemporary art gallery in the Line Yard Centre in empty retail units. And then, I've come on board Together Culture as a co-founder and community director.
Fantastic.
I should say I'm an artist in my own time as well, when I get the time.
I think maybe that's what you are, and then everything else is what you do, or is that too?
Yeah.
I just quickly turn my video on, and then I'll start sketching, because I'm going to work in my sketchbook today, but Ellie is working on a really exciting project. I don't know if you can tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, yeah. So I'm just in our Story of Our studio at the moment for Together Culture, and we are doing portraits based on people's favourite mistakes. So I'm working on one at the moment. I could just maybe I'll just show you where we're at the moment. They're all on mannequins. So this is where I'm at so far, and I'm going to be adding some stuff to it as we chat.
Really fantastic. Really looking forward to seeing that come together. So now let's talk about the artwork first, because we have lots to talk about. I'm just really curious, why do you find it so important to talk about mistakes and failure, and to have people open up about them, and to what is about failure that is interesting to you?
So I think failure is interesting because certainly the startup journey for me with Together Culture is a really new thing, and I never considered myself as an entrepreneur before, but I am one. I think lots of us are in the creative industries because we have to be a bit creative about how we're making a living. And you hear lots of talk about failing fast, get it out the way and all of this. But I think failure is clearly a universal experience that we all are going to continuously experience. I don't think it's something you can just fail a few times and be done. So I suppose we were interested in taking the shame out of it and asking, well, why do we class certain things as failures and mistakes? Who gets to make that decision? And also just looking at the inherent creativity and the problem solving that you have to do when mistakes happen.
I think it's a really interesting sort of subject, also sort of in art, but also in our society as a whole, because we view failure as something that is so terrible, and like, as long as we don't fail, and like really it's something to be to stay away from it. But it's also okay to do something for a period of time in your life. Say I'm running a business now and I'm doing that for a couple of years. And then after a while, if I decide I need to move on and do something else, then that's not failure. That's just the next step in your story. And it's okay to run a project for years and then close it down and do something else. And it's okay to try a hobby, like do dancing as a hobby. And then after 5 years, you think, actually, I'd like to do something else. That's not failure. That is just...
No, exactly. Yeah. And actually, even if something went wrong and that was why you stopped doing something, did something else, and people would maybe traditionally class that as a failure, I think it's a really positive thing because you've still put yourself out there, you've learned something new, and every decision you make after that will be informed by that mistake or whatever you call it. So I think we need to kind of reframe what mistakes mean to us and why. Are they a negative thing? I don't know. I don't think they should be, personally.
I think they could be, depending on how they influence your life going forward and how you feel about it, or how you sort of carry it with you going forward. But I think mistakes is also how you learn. If you're not allowed to make any mistakes, how can you learn?
Exactly. Because I can certainly, they feel a bit crap sometimes, don't they? I've had moments. feel a bit low, but
Hmm.
then you bounce back from it, or you take a new direction
Hmm.
based on what you learned, like you say.
Hmm. And also I think it's interesting to hear other people's failures, or if I put like little explanation mark failures, because sometimes it seems like everyone else's journey is going super smooth and perfect, whilst in reality, everyone has bumps and lows and, highlights, but also more difficult moments. And if you don't know about this, then how, you know, it's then the sort of comparison is going to be so unrealistic. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's interesting on many levels.
Yeah, how it's kind of that shame keeps us from sharing our mistakes sometimes. And
Hmm.
when you start to talk openly about them, you find other people are much quicker to tell you about their mistakes.
Hmm.
And it just takes some of the fear out of it in a way. And if we can start to do that as a society a bit more, then I think we will maybe start making decisions that might have felt a bit too scary before, kind of bolder decisions, and we take risks. And yeah, I think it feels like a really positive thing that we could do.
Hmm. I agree. And I know you do lots of different things. You're a big sort of community builder, you support other artists, you have this space, but how is your own art practice? What do you do in terms of like creating things sort of personally? What
Yeah.
things do you draw? What do you do?
I mainly paint, actually. I always say I'm really bad at drawing. I can't draw, but actually, I suppose painting is drawing in a way, isn't it? But I prefer to draw with paint. I have photos that I work from. So I went through a big phase of using my mum's old photos. I've bought photos on eBay, old family photos that people were selling off. Those, there's Kodak slides that you put in projectors.
Hmm.
Um, and I've just got a book at the moment that I'm working from, which is kind of hairdressers. It's like a how to cut your own hair book, and it's got lots of really fun photos from the 70s that I'm enjoying. So I have actually been drawing those in my sketchbook with paper, which is something I very rarely do, but I've been really enjoying. So I'm interested to see how that develops.
Interesting.
Studio, yeah.
I don't really understand why we make such a big distinction between drawing and painting. I think there's such a big overlap, and it seems like a lot of people think they
Yeah.
can draw, but I believe everyone can
Yeah.
draw. You can, practice,
Oh, is it?
become better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We do make it a thing. And
Mm.
actually, chances are, if you can do one, then you can do the other.
Mm.
I always think like anyone who doesn't think they can even produce work at all, it's a learned skill, isn't it? Everyone can do it given enough time.
I am just drawing from some photos from Pinterest.
Are you?
But I think
Love it.
Pinterest is a bit of a difficult place to find reference photos, isn't it? Because it's all copyright protected. But I think you should look for your sketchbook, and if you don't, sell it or something, then it's okay. But it's a bit of a difficult place. But I find
Yeah.
that when you look for stock photos, they are always like models who just
Yeah.
it's a bit boring to be honest. And then if you look at photos from real people, I just find it so much more interesting. But
So
also
how
Pinterest
do
is a
you,
great place. Yeah, that's a good tip. I like that.
yeah. What kind of source imagery do you tend to go for? Do you have a specific subject you like to paint or
I like everything. I paint,
yeah.
I draw, I love using different materials. I like to try different materials. And I know a lot of artists want to create a certain style in a certain medium, and I'm really bad at that. I just love to try everything.
I
um,
think that's so fun. Yeah. Doing a bit of everything.
so it really depends. And because I teach courses, as soon as I have a material that I fall in love with, I think, oh, I'm just going to create a course with it. So I practice with it, and then when I feel ready, I'm going to teach a course, and that's usually what I do.
Oh.
Or,
Yeah, yeah. To always be experimenting. I think that's
mm,
really, really helpful for your creativity and for developing your practice, right?
the I don't know. I just get bored if I do the same thing for a whole year. I love
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it. So I love drawing people, I love drawing animals, nature, like landscapes, buildings. If you sort of, like Cambridge is such a beautiful place. I love just sitting somewhere and just drawing the buildings around me. And you're usually really super wonky, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell me a bit more about Together Culture and what is it that you're building? Because I already know, but yeah, I don't think that
Sure. Yeah. So we are, so we're a culture organisation. So I think something that's interesting is we found that lots of people see us as as an art organisation, and that's because artists and creatives are really a big part of what we do, but it's not the only thing we do. And we're basically trying to create a change in culture where people come together and collaborate and help each other, and contribute to a bigger, healthier, more equal, creative economy in Cambridge. So we've got a few ways of getting there, but we're hoping to open our first permanent space later this year. So we'll have creative workspaces for artists, entrepreneurs, in the real broadest sense of that term. And then we'll have events. Well, we're running events this summer. The Story of Us program, which is where we're gathering these stories, and that's all about bringing the community together initially. And we're going to pull out all the threads from the stories that we're told, and from that, we're going to create our community manifesto, the Story of Us, which will say how we're going to be using our collective creativity to create a better, more ecological Cambridge. So that's really exciting. So we're gathering our initial members, and then long term, the really exciting plans are that we're going to be running a citizen studio, where we're asking everyone if in 10 years' time Cambridge was the most ecological and inclusive city in the world, what would be different? We'll kind of ideate around that and see what comes out of it, see what people want to do. And then we will use the themes from that to develop social enterprises. So we'll be running an incubator with some of the artists and entrepreneurs in our workspaces, and they'll develop these social enterprises. We'll be investing in one a year. They'll be community run, community led, and community owned. So it just starts to make some real economic change in Cambridge. It all starts with the Story of Us this summer, which is really exciting.
For the Story of Us and the portraits that you are creating for that, in my mind, that was specifically tailored towards artist failures. But can anyone write in their?
Yeah. Anyone can come along. We are trying to get a real range. And the main reason is, so we are so interested in artists and entrepreneurs and the creativity they have, because they think as artists, as creatives, we're really confident in our own creativity, and that's something we think, I'm a creative person. We believe everyone's creative. It's like an inherently human thing, but not everyone feels comfortable with that label. So we are very interested in getting a real range of people in, and part of it is seeing how that portrait sitting, how the sharing of the story, what does that reveal about your creativity? And some people have been leaving feeling a little bit more confident in that. I mean, that's just one element of the whole process, but we are interested in how people feel at the end, and whether they've unveiled some creative powers themselves or have a little bit more belief in that.
I really think, and you might see this differently, but I really believe that creativity is almost like an energy. Like we all have this within ourselves. We're all creative. Like us as human beings, we have this power to make stories, to share stories, to paint, to draw, to sing, to dance, to cook, to garden, and to make the spaces we live in beautiful, to decorate our house. And I think you can explore your creativity in so many different ways. And you don't have to be good at drawing to that's not the only expression of creativity. Like sometimes we have a really narrow view in that can be something different for everyone, but a really narrow view of what we think creativity is like. And then, but that's usually a specific skill that we might lack that you can learn, or some people are a bit more talented for that skill, some people a little bit less talented, but that's just a skill. That's not what creativity is. Yes, I'm a strong believer that every single person is creative, and we all have the inherent possibility of creative expression.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, we really believe the same thing, that we've all got it. I mean, we clearly do, don't we? When we're toddlers and we're using paint or whatever we can get our hands on, and the dance, the music, we all have a creative format that we like really identify with. Even if we're not a musician, maybe we love the music, and that's your creativity, right? So yeah, that's something we're really interested in exploring. And then we have something called the Living Book, which is our community values, which are help other people, collaborate, experiment, and turn up. So those values are throughout the Living Book. We explore tools to help you live those values. And the goal is just through using the Living Book and using these tools is to unlock those creative skills that we can use every day, like active listening, things like that, that can just help you work better with other people, whether you're working in the artistic kind of sector or whether you're working in, maybe you're an accountant, but it still counts. You still need those creative skills. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're in a non-creative job, like sort of outside what we call the creative industry, then they don't think they need any creative skills. But I think sometimes in those jobs you need it extra, especially if you want to bring positive change to an organization you work in, or if you want to,
exactly,
influence where things are going.
Yeah. It's the problem solving, it's the collaborating, experimenting. All of those are so applicable in everything we do. And some of the big challenges that we're approaching as a society, like climate change, we're not going to be able to solve that without really tapping into imagination and skills like that we're maybe not taught to value so much anymore, and we're not nurturing, because that's just, as a society, unfortunately not something we're valuing so much at the moment. But that's what we're working on changing a little bit, because we see them as really vital for long-term change.
Yeah, I love him. I think we're so focused on each other's differences as well, instead of looking at what brings people together. And we look at what people cannot do. If someone has a disability, we look at, what is that person missing, instead of what can they do, and what's maybe, what are they, their talents or their, I don't know. I think sometimes we're so looking for divides. So it's really lovely to have a place where people are actually coming together and working towards something that is inspiring. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we're excited about it. Yeah.
How is your painting and talking going at the same time? Is it a challenge?
It is a challenge, yeah. I don't often do this, I actually share a studio space, but we're very rarely in there at the same time. So it's quite luxurious, really. I feel like I'm always working on my own. So this is a good challenge to kind of focus on both. It's a little bit like, what's that? Patting your head, rubbing your tummy at the same time. I suppose you're used to it.
I'm used to it, yeah. I find it much easier. I used to find it really difficult, but now I think if I have to think about things that I'm going to do, then I cannot do anything else. But if I have planned what I'm going to do already, and then I'm drawing it, then I can talk or listen to a podcast or watch, not really TV, because you have virtual paper, but you can sort of have something on in the background. But if I'm thinking about, what course to develop, or what am I going to draw for this children's book page? The thinking phase, I really need to quiet and focus. But as soon as I'm past that, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time planning out what I was going to do today, because, yeah, hard to think and talk at the same time.
So, you said that you studied in Cambridge, and then you founded the other space that you run before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you find it to go to art school? How did you find it useful? Can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah, I loved it. So I went to, like I said, I went to Anglo Ruskin, to the art school there, and I found the tutors so supportive. I'm still in touch with a few of them. Um, and yeah, I found it a great experience. So I kind of developed my painting practice there. And then when I graduated, I was in touch with a couple of friends who, well, we all just felt like we were really missing that support network when you leave. It's such a difference, isn't it? When you have to be able to have people that give you critical feedback, I think, and challenge you a little bit when you're making work. So yeah, we missed that, and that's why we ended up setting up Motion Sickness, which was just to kind of build a bit of community back in Cambridge, or the art community. I know there's loads of stuff going on in Cambridge, but I think everyone finds that unless you're tapped into one of them, it can sometimes seem like there's not that much going along. So that was what we did, and yeah, I don't know. I think that's the challenge that everyone wonders about, isn't it? How to kind of unite the Cambridge art scene. But the reality is there is loads going on. You just need to know where to find it a little bit.
Yeah. I think, well, and if you can't find it, set it up yourself. This is clearly
exactly
what they're doing. And you said earlier that you think of yourself as an entrepreneur as well, which I find really interesting, because I think a lot of artists just focus on the making of the art, and they forget about, having to sell their art or having to market themselves or their practice.
Yeah.
So is that something that you learned in school, or have you always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit?
So yeah, really good question. That's a very recent thing for me. It's something I'm still learning to label myself as, or to identify with, because I know I am, because I'm obviously in this role of community building and starting up together culture. But I think it's just like not something we're taught to identify with as artists, or I certainly wasn't at art school. But a lot of the skills are very transferable, and a lot of the stuff we're doing at Together Culture is we're interested in bringing artists and entrepreneurs together. Like, what magic happens there, because you both have very similar creative imagination skills, but there are also differences in the way that you maybe work. So we think that could be a bit of a secret sauce there, bringing those two groups together in our workspace. But yeah, that was something I never really identified with before. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I wonder why we kind of separate the two.
I think it's almost as if we divide society into two groups: people who sort of are good at sales, and perhaps they are in like a more commercial role or a more commercial environment.
Yeah.
And then people who are creative, as if that cannot go together with being commercial, and also as if being commercial cannot go together with positive change.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need for these things to be excluded from one another.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? The assumptions but you're absolutely right. That's, I think, that's the stereotype, isn't it? That you're one or the other, and entrepreneurs are not. I don't know. I guess I would have thought of them as being not that creative, but they're so creative. And likewise, artists can be really good at business. It's not one or the other. So yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah. One thing that I do find a little bit hard is just because the thing that you're selling is really personal to you. If you make art and if you make things that you create with your own hands, and I guess it's the same if you run a bakery or something, like the thing that you're making is so personal to you. And then I find to constantly sort of, like, for example, on social media, you're constantly sharing these same things. And sometimes you think, oh, people must be so tired of hearing this or of hearing, and in reality, they're not, because they don't see all your posts, and people are actually interested in what you're doing. So I don't think you have to worry about bothering people with the things that you make. But it can be, sometimes a bit hard. Where you're like, I've already told people this 10 times. Surely they've heard enough now. Is that something that you find hard? Or?
Yeah. What's interesting is that, so I don't think my art practice is very separate. I used to show a little bit, but recently, in the last few years, I've become, basically since COVID, actually, I've become very sort of hermity when it comes to my art practice. Not deliberately, I just have, it's been something I think I've been working through, developing a few things. So I haven't done any public exhibitions, and I haven't sold anything. I mean, I have a website, but that's about it, and it's not something I push very often. So I think I'm really curious about how other artists do it, and what that process is like. Because I think I'd feel probably avoid it, because I'm probably a little bit uncomfortable about it, and I've not done it very much, so I don't know. Yeah, about that marketing, because you're right, it feels very personal. I feel like it would be marketing myself, and that sounds like something really scary, and I don't know how I would do it. But what was that journey like for you?
I find it sometimes really easy and sometimes really hard. It really depends on my mood. I'm quite an open book, so I don't mind sharing things about myself and sharing things about what I'm doing or what I'm working on. And I'm a big believer in showing sort of every part of my process. So I'm making some doodles now. It's quite possible that it will come out really terrible, because we're recording this live, and I'm okay with that. I'm so used to sharing what I do that if I'm really unhappy with these drawings, I think, well, I'll make 100 more this year, so it's just one of the 100. So I find this sort of sharing of my drawings quite easily. But I'm not I find social media in general quite draining. So I try and find ways of doing it and integrating it in my life that it's not overtaking, because I think that's an easy thing to happen. And something like recording a podcast for me is like slow social media. So people can still listen to this podcast once it's published a year later, 2 years later. So it's not like that grind where you have to post every single day. It's a bit more in depth, more value, I think. Longer content, things like that, like a YouTube channel, writing a blog or a newsletter, things like that I really enjoy. But the places where you have to post every day and constantly have to be active, I'm not very good at that, because I can get my phone for 3 days and then it's like, oh, I should have posted something. So
totally on that. Yeah. I find it quite, I'm really happy to post occasionally if it's something I'm happy with, but I've never tried to do the consistent posting with my personal stuff, and I think that's just a choice that I suppose I haven't had to, but I think I would really struggle with it. Yeah, it's the relentlessness of it, I suppose, is quite intimidating.
But I know people who really enjoy it. So everyone is different, and everyone gets energy from different things. And I think a lot of social media places are really good, like community places where you can get to know other illustrators, for example. And that's what I like about it. But I think that whole sort of like creating reels and like funny videos and having to do dances and TikTok and stuff, no, that's not for me.
Same.
Yeah. I'm looking at a lot of drawings that are sort of a bit more vintagey, with lots of old people, old sort of farmers working on the land. So that's where I got these pictures from.
Love it.
I love drawing older faces, I think.
I do as well, actually. I don't know whether that's I wonder where that comes from.
I think it's all the wrinkles and beards and hair and like someone like a lift-in face. All of them.
Yeah.
When you do paint, do you like to work large or small? What's you said you prefer?
Yeah, I actually love working relatively large. I'm usually kind of doing like a meter by meter if I can. Sometimes a little bit smaller, but yeah, I've been experimenting with this for ages because I know there's a bit of a thing of like, you know, I think sometimes it could be perceived as like a little bit of a macho thing. Like the bigger you're painting, the more like you're trying to be a bit of a macho person. But I think I like the physicality of it because when you're painting small, you're kind of, but when you're painting big, you have to kind of move around a bit, and that's something that really appeals to me. And when it gets smaller, I find it very difficult to kind of contain myself, and I find myself kind of checking out mentally. So yeah, I always like to go bigger scale if I can. Um, but then you've got a storage issue, haven't you? I'm always need to figure out where I'm going to stash my painting.
Do you keep everything you make?
No, um, I'm always painting over stuff. I'm always painting over stuff that I've done. So sometimes I'll sell the work, but I won't. I mean, that's not something I actively chase, like I said. So just very occasionally happens. And the rest of the time, I'm either, storing it in my studio or painting over it. But that's something I like is I really struggle with the empty canvas, and I very rarely paint something first time and enjoy it. But I'll paint over the top of it, and previous images will sort of come through. Yeah. So we end up with a painting that's kind of got a few things going on beneath the surface, which is something I like. And I'm kind of dealing with memory, I guess, anyway. So feels relevant.
I think a lot of people would struggle painting out of their old paintings, especially if it's something that they're quite proud of or something that they really like. I think it's quite hard to then paint over it. But I really like the idea. I should do that. And I do like to work
really
large, but
fun.
I think because I'm often filming, I have to work quite small because it's a bit easier.
Sure.
I have this dream of buying really big canvas and just putting it on the wall and just taping it to the wall or something, and then use it on space. But
it's really fun. And I think sometimes it can seem a bit intimidating, but you just have to get stuck in. And then I think that's the joy of certain types of paint is you can just keep going over and over, and it doesn't actually matter if you get something wrong. I think that's maybe something I find scary about ink on paper is if you make a mistake, you can't make mistakes.
No. I love that about ink on paper, that every line is just there. And for the first lines, that's really scary. But then once you sort of lean into that, I really like it. I find it, then I find it quite liberating. Because you just know that there's things that you're not happy with, and it's just reality.
Yeah. You have to get okay with it.
Yeah. Because as soon as you start going, if you draw with graphite, for example, and you have an eraser, sometimes you can be so like fiddly where you have, oh no, this is not right, and then erase it, and then something else, this is not right. And you can get so into the trying to get it perfect that you sort of lose the joy a bit. If everything is there permanently, then
loosens you up a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. Something that I've never tried, but that I really like to try. So I didn't go to art school, so I just try things when I sort of feel inspired to buy them. I really like to try like really thick texture paints where you can put it on the canvas and you have all these like peaks of paint sort of sticking. Oh, I've never done that, but that seems so much fun to me.
Yeah. I haven't either, but to like slap it on.
Really textured.
Yeah, I'm sort of the opposite. I work in such thin, I kind of make it transparent. You can see through all my paintings. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how you have these natural languages emerge, don't they? And you end up with your own way of doing things. But it sounds like you're much better at kind of switching up what you're doing, whereas I think I get stuck in my way and I'm like, this is how I do it.
Well, that's good as well. I think if you find something that you love, then why change the formula? I think it's good to challenge yourself once in a while, but if you really enjoy something, then you don't have to, right? There's no rules. There's no.
Yeah, that's really true.
I think also sometimes people forget that there's so many different ways of illustrating, so many different materials and things to try out. So, for example, sometimes people come to me and they say, I'm really terrible at watercolors. Listen, well, then try charcoal or try oil paint or just doodle with a pen. Like there's no, like, you can always come back to it, but there's no need to sticking with this one medium.
You don't love one, it doesn't mean you're not meant to be doing something else. Yeah, you don't have to be good at it all.
Can you tell me a little bit about the space behind?
Sure. Yeah. So this is how. So yeah, I'm actually based in one of the rooms in St Paul's Church on Hills Road at the moment. Mm-hmm. This is our pop-up Story of Us studio. So we've got it until 23rd of June. Mm-hmm. And shall I give you a little? Shall I show you?
Yeah, absolutely.
With my laptop. So we've got these really cool curtains, and a bit about the space. We have our mannequins over here for the initial starting of the mannequins, and this is just where I'm working at the moment. So yeah, we've got some like refreshments over here and some art materials in the sauna. So yeah, it's a really cool space. And it's just our first sort of base that we can make work, bring people, gather the community. Initially, we've had a few events, as you know, and yeah, so it's our own cozy little space. And it was designed by Abe Rogers Design, which we love. We love how pink and red it is. And you didn't see, but there's a red carpet on the floor as well.
Yeah, it's an expensive color when you walk in, especially because the space. It's quite a small space and it's quite cozy, and then with all the color, it's like you walk into environment.
Sort of glows, doesn't it? Yeah.
Do you have to bring it all back to white once you move out to the new space?
Yeah, so it was like a pale yellow, and yes, it will be returning to a pale yellow at the end, and we'll keep the curtains and things, and we'll
you can be
hopefully transforming a new space soon, but will to be announced.
So I need to make sure that I share all the information of where everyone can find Together Culture and Story of Us, and I'll make sure I share everything. And there's still space for people to join and to book in for the portraits, and for me to make sure that everyone knows about this.
There is, yeah. So we are gathering the first 100 stories. So we have about 85 portraits to go. So yeah, and they all need to be booked in by the end of June. So if people go to our website, togetherculture.com, you can just book your portrait, and it's open to non-members as well. But it's good to become a member, and then you get free access to all of our events, unlimited access. So
there's so many events coming up as well. I feel like the summer is really.
We've got some really fun stuff happening, so we've got every portrait that we make will be part of a installation at the Fitzwilliam Museum later this year in August. They've got a week-long event called Fitzfest, so we'll be there. And we have CV of Failure workshops, which should be really fun, again looking at this idea of mistakes, and we'll have like some refreshments and nibbles and things. And we have campfire sessions, which are kind of creativity development sessions. And we've got a tournament of University Challenge Goes to Town pub quiz. So that's kind of a mix of all these quiz shows and games and things. So it should be really fun, and we'll be kind of going around different venues in Cambridge and doing like a tournament pub quiz. So there's other stuff, but that's a little taster of what you can get when you're involved as a member.
I think it's all fantastic, and there's lots going on as well. You must be quite busy.
We are, in the most fun way. We're busy, but it's good, and it's really exciting. The community is growing and people are interested in what we're doing, so this is just the beginning, which is thrilling, to be honest. I can't wait to see what happens next. And
I came to your opening event, and I've spoken to people there who are into theater making, podcasters, some artists, painters. Like there's really a big variety of different creatives who are members, and that's really I love that. I think that's really interesting. So for anyone who is sort of in and around Cambridge, go check it out. I would really, really recommend it. Is there anything that I'm forgetting that you'd like to add, or anything you want to share?
Ooh, I don't think so. I think we've covered it all. Yeah.
Can you share what you've painted so far?
Absolutely.
If
I
it's
don't know how far.
sure.
45 minutes goes really quickly, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
I've just started to outline a heart.
Oh.
I don't know if you can see it.
And all the portraits are going to be completely different, right? Like multiple artists worked on them, and they're all going to be very, unique.
Yeah. So we were in the session, in the portrait sitting. Obviously, every sitter will share their story about their favourite mistake, and part of that session, they'll be chatting with the artist, and the two of them will work together to decide how the story will be represented. And but yeah, if people don't feel comfortable, if they're worried about, I don't feel very creative, then that's something the artist can lead on. And it's they're very tailored sessions.
Yeah, fantastic. And in the final exhibition at Fitzwilliam, do the stories, can they be anonymous if people want to share things?
That's such a good question. Yeah, all of the stories are going to be anonymous because we appreciate that some failures can be really scary to share, and so we want to honour that. And so the only people that will know about mistakes are internal Together Culture staff members who you share your story with. But they won't be identified in the final piece.
So you won't be like, oh, Irene did something really stupid in 1995.
Exactly. No worries about that.
You can find the photos on Facebook here. No, it's not going to be like that.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast. I really love talking to you. I feel like when you're sort of drawing with people, you can just carry on for hours. So thank you.
Went really quickly. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.